Victor had it all: a thriving career, prestige, and a future paved with luxury. But when his mother forced him into an arranged marriage with Grace, a modest woman from the village, he couldn't hide his disdain. A refined man like Victor didn't belong with someone like her, or so he thought. What began as a marriage of obligation soon turned into a battlefield of pride, resentment, and longing. It all began one morning when Victor's mother brought him a young woman from their hometown, insisting he marry her. "Mother, how do you expect me to marry a local girl you dragged from the village? Did you see the way she was chewing her food like a cow?" "Mum, I am too refined to be tied to such a woman, let alone call her my wife," Victor complained bitterly, his face tight with irritation. His mother, Mrs. Kinney, gave him a long, cold stare and replied, "That young woman you are insulting is humble and intelligent. She may not have had the opportunities you had, but that doesn't make her less. Stop insulting her and start seeing her as your wife, because very soon the two of you will be married. Grace will make the best wife for you." Victor was a workaholic who hardly spared time for relationships. For years, his mother had waited patiently for him to bring home a woman, but Victor was too buried in his work to even consider marriage. Desperate to see her son settle down, Mrs. Kinney took matters into her own hands. She traveled back to their village in Abbey Estate and chose Grace, a modest and well-mannered young woman from a humble family. To Mrs. Kinney, Grace had all the qualities of a good wife: respectful, obedient, and ready to build a home. But to Victor, she was far from what he pictured as a life partner. Days turned into weeks, and despite his mother's persistence, Victor could not warm up to Grace. Her quiet and polite nature seemed to him like weakness. "How can I, a successful man, end up with a village girl?" he often thought. When his friends at work learned of the arranged engagement, they mocked him, worsening his disdain for Grace. He avoided her whenever possible, ignoring his mother's efforts to bring them together. Grace, though wounded by his coldness, remained patient. She had been raised to respect elders, and Mrs. Kinney had spoken highly of her son before their introduction. She held on to the belief that, with time, Victor would recognize her worth. She tried adjusting to city life in Ikoyi, struggling but determined to learn. Victor's dedication to his career only deepened her admiration, even if he did not notice her feelings. One evening, after a heated argument about their impending wedding, Victor lashed out at his mother. "I cannot marry a girl like her, Mother. She is not on my level. What will people say when they see me with her?" Mrs. Kinney, tired of his arrogance, finally snapped. "Victor, you always judge people by their status and appearance. But I see qualities in Grace that you refuse to notice. She is kind, humble, and has the potential to grow into a strong woman. You, my son, need someone like her to balance the pride swelling inside you." In the end, Victor gave in, not because of love, but to please his mother. He knew he would never hear the end of it if he refused, so he married Grace, even though he felt no affection for her. In Victor's eyes, Grace was nothing more than a poor village girl. He married her simply to give his mother the grandchildren she desperately desired. Grace quickly sensed his coldness. Mrs. Kinney had earlier told her that Victor was a workaholic and that she should not worry, as love would grow with time. Holding on to that promise, Grace did all she could to win Victor's heart, but he showed no interest. They lived like strangers under the same roof, sharing a bed only when children were to be made. To Victor, marriage was an obligation, nothing more than a duty to satisfy his mother and uphold family tradition. Grace, however, clung to hope. She believed that, in time, her husband would see her worth, just as his mother had. Their marriage lacked love, but her patience was unshakable. She cooked his favorite meals, took care of the home, and devoted herself to the family. Still, Victor remained cold. He stayed late at the office, only returning home to sleep. The intimacy Grace longed for was non-existent. The emotional distance widened as the months rolled into years. Although she bore him 2 beautiful children, Victor's resentment only deepened. He could not shake the feeling that he had been forced into a marriage he never wanted. When he looked at Grace, he saw only the village girl his mother had chosen. Her countless efforts to please him went unnoticed. Instead, he criticized her at every turn. "You will never understand my world," he would say. "You do not belong here." Grace felt the sting of his words but swallowed her pain in silence. Speaking up, she knew, would only worsen matters. Despite the loveless nature of their marriage, Grace found comfort in her children. She poured her love and energy into raising them, hoping that one day Victor would realize how much she had sacrificed for the family. But to him, she remained nothing more than the village girl he had been forced to marry, and he treated her accordingly. One day, after years of staying at home, Grace gathered the courage to approach Victor. "I want to work," she said softly, hoping he would support her. Instead of encouragement, Victor burst out laughing. "Work? What can you possibly do? You're just a village girl with a village education," he mocked. His words pierced deeply, but Grace refused to let them stop her. She knew she had more to offer. Though her education came from the village, she had determination and skill. So, she began searching for a job in Ikoyi, moving from one company to another. She faced rejection after rejection, but she refused to give up. After weeks of persistent effort, Grace finally secured a position at Heritage Allied Firm, a local establishment. The pay was modest, but to her, it was a starting point. When Victor heard about her new job and the salary, he could not hide his scorn. He was earning more than 20 times her income, and he ridiculed her achievement at every opportunity. "You should stick to taking care of the house and the kids. That's the only thing you're good at," he said with disdain. Grace ignored his insults and threw herself into her work, determined to prove herself. The beginning was rough, but gradually she adapted and began excelling. Her colleagues grew to respect her, and within 5 months, she had won the admiration of her boss. Impressed by her dedication, he promoted her to a managerial role. The salary increase was substantial, allowing her to contribute meaningfully to the household. But instead of celebrating her progress, Victor grew bitter. He could not bear the thought that the woman he had always belittled was rising above him. His envy festered, and when Grace's salary eventually surpassed his, he could not accept it. Convinced that her success had to be the result of something inappropriate, Victor began accusing her of having an affair with her boss. In his mind, there was no other explanation for her sudden promotion and rapid growth. Grace pleaded with him, insisting her success was earned, but Victor had already made up his mind. What he did not know was that Grace's achievements came from a skill she had secretly acquired long before. And due to this skill, she was promoted at work one fateful morning, when her boss stormed into the office, furious. Some financial records that had been assigned to a colleague were riddled with errors. Grace's boss was pissed, knowing how much time it would take to balance those figures. The entire office was tense. No one wanted to face his wrath. Grace, noticing the panic, quietly walked over to her colleague's desk and offered to help. At first, her colleague hesitated, but with no other solution in sight, she handed the files over. Grace carried them to her desk, powered on her computer, and began working. Her coworkers watched curiously, whispering among themselves. In less than 2 hours, Grace returned the files to her boss. She had corrected all the errors. Normally, it took 12 hours to balance such records manually, yet she had completed the task in record time. Her boss was stunned. "How did you do this?" he asked in disbelief. The office fell silent, waiting for her reply. Grace, shy but honest, explained that years earlier, a man visiting their village from abroad had taught her basic computer skills. He had seen her talent with numbers and encouraged her to learn, assuring her that one day the knowledge would prove useful. Grace, always hungry for learning, had mastered the techniques as if her life depended on it. It was that knowledge which allowed her to handle the task so quickly. Her boss was not only impressed, but also relieved to have such talent in his team. Without hesitation, he placed her in charge of balancing the company's records. From then on, she worked closely with him. Victor's jealousy grew darker with each passing day. He was convinced that Grace's closeness with her boss had to be romantic. "There's no way you're getting all these promotions on merit," he snapped one evening. "You must be sleeping with him." The accusation cut Grace deeply. She had done nothing but work hard to earn her place. Though she tried explaining, Victor refused to listen. In his eyes, she was still the simple village girl, incapable of achieving success on her own. He became obsessed with the thought of her infidelity, showing up unannounced at her office, monitoring her movements, and even following her after work. His behavior grew increasingly erratic, and their already fragile marriage began to collapse completely. One day, Victor abandoned his duties at his workplace and parked across the street from Grace's firm, determined to catch Grace and her boss together. Hours passed as he sat spying, his thoughts consumed with jealousy. As Victor sat in his car across from the office, his phone rang. It was his boss calling, but Victor ignored it, his eyes fixed on the building. Moments later, he saw Grace step out, laughing lightly as she walked beside her boss. To Victor's shock, the man even opened his car door for her before they both drove off together. Victor's blood boiled, his heart pounded, his mind spiraling with rage. He muttered under his breath, "So, it's true. She's making a fool of me." Without hesitation, he started his car and followed them. Every laugh Grace shared with her boss on the way felt like a dagger piercing his chest. Eventually, they arrived at a car dealership around Ikoyi. Victor parked at a distance, watching them intently. Grace and her boss got out, speaking with a salesman and pointing at different vehicles. They appeared to be negotiating and comparing prices. Victor's anger intensified as he watched them settle around a sleek new car. In his mind, there was only one explanation. Her boss was buying Grace a car to impress her, proof of an affair. Unable to stomach the sight, Victor sped off, his head clouded with jealousy and resentment. When he arrived at the office later that afternoon, his boss was angry. "Victor, where have you been? You missed a crucial meeting with the investors today. Investors you were supposed to handle. Because of your negligence, we've lost them." Victor stammered, struggling to defend himself, but his boss cut him off sharply. "This is not the first time you've been absent and distracted. We cannot afford to keep someone who doesn't prioritize this company. You're fired, effective immediately." The words hit Victor like a hammer to the chest. Fired? He couldn't believe it. His pride, his career, everything he had built, collapsed before his eyes. Shocked and broken, he packed up his belongings and left the office. When he arrived home that evening, his fury had reached a dangerous peak. As he approached the compound, his eyes landed on a brand new car parked out front, the same one he had seen Grace and her boss pricing at the dealership. Blinded by rage, Victor grabbed a container of petrol from the corner of the compound, poured it over the car, and lit a match. In seconds, the vehicle went up in flames. Neighbors rushed out, shouting, some trying desperately to put out the fire. Grace, returning home shortly after, froze in horror at the sight. Her heart sank as she screamed, "Victor, what are you doing? That was your birthday present! I bought it for you!" Victor turned to her, still seething with jealousy, his face twisted in disbelief. "My birthday present? Do you think I'm a fool? I saw you at the dealership with your boss laughing and picking out that car together. You expect me to believe this wasn't his gift to you?"
"You've been cheating on me, Grace!"
Grace's face went pale. She could not believe the depth of her husband's suspicion. Tears welled in her eyes as she pulled out the car documents from her bag and shoved them at him. "Victor, I have never cheated on you. I bought this car for you, to show my love and appreciation despite everything you've put me through. Look at the papers. Your name is boldly written as the owner." Victor's anger faltered as he scanned the documents. The reality hit him hard. He had destroyed a car that was meant as a gift for him, bought with his wife's hard-earned money. The neighbors, gathered around the burning wreckage, murmured in disbelief. Some shook their heads. Others whispered among themselves, watching the once proud man crumble. Grace's tears flowed freely as she continued, her voice trembling. "I worked tirelessly, Victor. I wanted to surprise you, to make you proud. But instead, You've accused me, belittled me, and destroyed the one gift I thought would show you how much I care. All these years, I've endured your coldness, hoping you'd finally see me. But now I know who you truly are." Victor's knees buckled, and he sank to the ground, his chest tightening with regret. The fire's reflection burned in his tear-filled eyes, mirroring the destruction of his pride and marriage. "I'm sorry, Grace," he whispered hoarsely, struggling to meet her gaze. "I didn't know. I thought you were cheating on me with your boss. I ruined everything." Grace stood in silence for a moment, her heart heavy with pain. She had endured years of neglect and disrespect, and now the man before her was broken, finally realizing his mistakes. But deep inside, she wondered if it was already too late. As the neighbors managed to put out the flames, she turned to him and said, "I've been patient for years, Victor. I've waited for you to see me as more than just a village girl, but I cannot continue living like this, constantly proving myself to someone who refuses to value me." With that, Grace walked past him into the house, her steps steady but her heart shattered. Victor remained outside, devastated. The smoke from the burnt car lingered in the air, a bitter reminder of the consequences of his pride and jealousy. He had lost his job, his respect, and worst of all, the love of a woman he had never truly appreciated, until it was too late. As night settled in, Victor sat by himself amidst the remnants of the burned car, realizing that some things, once ruined, could never be restored. He entered the house and noticed that Grace had locked herself in her room. She was filled with bitterness and refused to speak with him. Victor felt a deep pain in his chest. He desperately wanted to make amends with her, but Grace was unwilling to even talk to him. He stood in front of her door for hours, begging her to forgive him, but Grace remained silent, lost in her own thoughts about what to do. For weeks, Grace gave Victor the cold shoulder, her detachment a stark contrast to the warmth she once showed him. Every attempt Victor made to reach out to her was met with indifference or silence. The growing distance between them felt more unbearable with each passing day, and Victor, now deeply in love with the woman he had once taken for granted, found himself in excruciating pain. The silence from Grace was far more painful than losing his job. The lack of communication ate away at him, leaving him restless and tormented. Victor never realized how much he truly needed her. Until now. His mind was consumed with thoughts of her, and for the first time, he felt utterly powerless. He spent sleepless nights reflecting on every time he had belittled her, every opportunity he had to cherish the extraordinary woman she was but failed to see. Now he understood. Grace wasn't just the village girl he once looked down on. She was his source of strength, his hope, and the one who truly balanced him. But now, it seemed, she no longer wanted him. In desperation, he turned to his mother for help. He begged her to speak with Grace on his behalf, hoping her words could soften Grace's heart. His mother agreed to help, visiting Grace and trying to mediate. "Grace, my dear," she said kindly, "I know Victor has hurt you deeply, and you have every right to be upset, but please, give him another chance. He knows he's wronged you." Though respectful, Grace remained unmoved. The hurt Victor had caused over the years had left deep scars, and she was no longer willing to return to him so easily. Victor's heartfelt apologies, though sincere, could not undo the damage he had caused. She needed more than just words to heal, and she wasn't ready to forgive him just yet. Crushed by her continued coldness, Victor spiraled into a deep depression. He couldn't bear the thought of living without Grace. His overwhelming love for her made the thought of her never returning that love unbearable. Each day, the house felt like it was closing in on him, suffocating him with guilt and regret. One evening, unable to bear the pain any longer, Victor decided he couldn't go on living like this. The weight of his guilt, the job he had lost, and the love he feared would never be returned pushed him into a dark place. He wrote a note, apologizing to Grace and their children, and locked himself in the bathroom, preparing to end his life. Just as he was about to go through with it, Grace burst into the room, her face pale with shock. She had sensed something was wrong and rushed to find him. "Victor!" she screamed, her voice shaking with fear. "What are you doing?" Victor, startled, looked at her with tear-filled eyes. "I can't go on like this anymore, Grace," he whispered. "I've lost everything, my job, my pride, and worst of all, you. I don't deserve you. I never did. I just wanted you to know how sorry I am before I go." Grace's heart shattered as she looked at the broken man before her. She had been angry, yes, but seeing Victor like this, so lost and defeated, something inside her softened. The man who had once been so proud and full of arrogance was now vulnerable, pleading for her forgiveness in the most tragic way. "No, Victor," Grace cried as she rushed towards him, pulling him into her arms. "Don't you dare do this. Don't you dare leave me like this." Her voice cracked as she held him tightly. "I've been hurt, yes. You've made mistakes. But ending your life is not the answer. We can work through this. We can find a way." Victor sobbed in her arms, his body trembling with emotion.
"I'm so sorry, Grace. I was blinded by my pride, by my jealousy."
"I couldn't see you for who you truly are, and now I've lost you." Grace pulled back slightly, looking him in the eyes. "You haven't lost me, Victor, but things need to change. I need time to heal. We need time to rebuild what's been broken. I won't lie. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But I don't want to lose you either." They sat there for a long time, holding each other, their tears mingling with the raw emotions filling the room. For the first time in a long time, there was no anger between them, only the possibility of healing. In the days that followed, Victor began making deliberate efforts to show Grace he was changing. He woke up early to help with the children, cooked breakfast some mornings, and tried to be present in ways he had never been before. He listened to her, asked about her day, and even accompanied her to church, something he had never bothered to do. Though Grace remained guarded, she could not deny that she noticed the difference. The arrogance that once defined him seemed to be softening. For the first time in years, Victor was acting like the husband she had prayed for. One morning, while he was tending to the garden in front of the house, Victor's phone buzzed with a message from his former boss at Crestfield Consulting Limited. The message read, "Victor, the investors you lost months ago have asked to meet with you again. If you're still interested, come to the office, but this will be your last chance. Don't waste it." Victor's heart skipped a beat. He could hardly believe his eyes. The project that had cost him his job, his reputation, and his peace of mind was suddenly back on the table. He rushed to get dressed and headed straight to the office. When he arrived, his former boss met him with a firm expression. "It seems one of the investors changed his mind. He's willing to meet you next week, but understand this, Victor. This is your final chance. If you fail again, there won't be another." Victor nodded eagerly, though inside he was puzzled. Why the sudden change? He wondered. Who could have spoken on my behalf? That evening, back at home, he shared the news with Grace. "I've been given another chance with the investors," he said, his voice a mixture of hope and disbelief. Grace looked at him carefully, then asked, "Do you know who convinced them?" Victor shook his head slowly. "No. Why? Do you?" Grace hesitated, then replied softly, "I think I do." Victor stared at Grace, confused. "What do you mean?" "Tell me." Grace took a deep breath before answering. "While you were drowning in your guilt, I had a conversation with my boss's brother. He works closely with several top investors. When he mentioned a certain failed project, I realized it was the same one you had been handling before you lost your job." Victor's eyes widened. "You spoke to him about me?" Grace nodded gently. "Yes. I told him what really happened, that you were going through a rough time, that the mistakes you made didn't define you. I explained how much this project meant to you, and how capable you are when you focus. He must have spoken to his brother, because that's why the investors are giving you another chance." Victor was stunned. He struggled to find words as the reality sank in. The very woman he had insulted, doubted, and accused of infidelity was the one who had just saved his career. His voice cracked as he finally spoke. "Grace, I don't even know what to say. After everything I've done to you, after all the pain I caused, you still stood for me?" Grace's eyes softened, but remained cautious. "I did it because I still believe in family, Victor. I did it for our children. But understand this. I will not go back to the way things were. If we are to move forward, things must truly change." Victor's heart swelled with gratitude and shame all at once. He held her hands, tears brimming in his eyes. "I don't deserve you, Grace, but I promise you, I will spend the rest of my life proving myself worthy." The following week, Victor dressed carefully in a neatly pressed navy blue suit, determined to make the best impression he could. He arrived at Crestfield Consulting Limited early, his heart pounding as he prepared for the meeting that could decide his future. Inside the conference room sat the panel of investors, including Grace's boss's brother, who gave him a polite nod. Victor took a deep breath and began his presentation. This time, he was composed, focused, and humble. He explained the project in detail, addressed the risks, and laid out clear strategies for success. Unlike before, there was no trace of arrogance in his tone, only sincerity and determination. As the discussion ended, the lead investor leaned back in his chair and said, "Victor, we can see that you've done your homework. We're willing to proceed with the project again. Don't let us down." Relief flooded Victor's body. He could hardly believe it. He was being given another chance. When he returned home that evening, he went straight to Grace, tears in his eyes. He pulled her into his arms and whispered, "Thank you. You saved my career. I regret every harsh word I ever said to you, every doubt I ever cast. You're the best thing that has ever happened to me." Grace stood still for a moment, her heart torn between caution and hope. Slowly, she allowed herself to rest against him. From that day forward, Victor made it his mission to show her that he had truly changed. He no longer saw her as the village girl his pride once dismissed. Instead, he recognized her as the strong, intelligent, and loving woman she had always been. Though Grace was still guarded, she began to believe that perhaps their marriage could be rebuilt, brick by brick. Over time, Victor worked tirelessly to prove his love and commitment. He paid attention to the little things he had once ignored, helping Grace with chores, supporting her work, and cherishing the children with genuine affection. Grace, though still healing from years of hurt, began to notice the consistency in his efforts. Slowly, the cracks in their marriage started to mend. There were still scars, but there was also growth. Victor never forgot the lessons his downfall had taught him. Pride and jealousy had nearly destroyed his life, but humility and patience gave him a second chance. Grace, on her part, held on to forgiveness, not because she had forgotten the pain, but because she chose to give her marriage and family a fighting chance. The story of Victor and Grace carries a timeless lesson. Never look down on anyone because of their background or circumstances. Everyone has unique value, and pride blinds us from seeing it. Marriage, too, should never be entered into without genuine love and intention, because the institution requires patience, sacrifice, and forgiveness. Above all, we must learn to forgive. No one is perfect. We all make mistakes and wrong others at some point, but a forgiving heart can heal wounds and rebuild what pride has broken. And so, Victor and Grace's journey became more than just a story of pain. It became a story of redemption, second chances, and the quiet strength of humility. What lesson did you deduce from the story? I will like to hear your thoughts in the comments section. If this story touched your heart, kindly subscribe, like, and share to your loved ones. Until I bring another story your way, bye.